the last video I made, I just constructed this. It wasn't quite clear where everything went, and maybe it's a good time to take a look at that. So we're just going to tilt it over really quick. But if we look at the bottom of this, this is the ramp 1.4, and there are actually 6 places for sensors. And the way it works is on the 6th there's a X, Y, and a Z, top and bottom. Now we only use the top, and so the Z, if you look in here carefully enough, the Z one is that very first one, and then there's X and Y. I'll make some documents to do this, but there's also the second one in is the tip probe. That's where you want to plug that one in. And the other ones have 3 pins on them because they are powered. They are a Hall effect sensor, but the tip probe is not, the tip pressure sensor. And other than that, everything is pretty straightforward. The white wire was, this one here was the, let me see, that was the feedback for the temperature. Okay. And then we also had all the other ones. The motors were very straightforward. They're marked X, Y, and Z, and you just have to make sure you get the color the same on all of them. And I'll post some things about color. Blue is on the right-hand side, depending on how you look at it. That's obviously not very clear. But I'm going to do something to tie all these up together so they aren't causing big issues here. I also have the right software loaded on there now that was on the Blomker website. And what you use is Marlin Delta2. So I'll show you here. On the you have to use the Arduino software to load it. And I had to modify it quite a bit. And I'll tell you all the things I have to modify in a little bit. But the Configuration.h and the Marlin Delta2 is in, you can see that Marlin Delta2 is the firmware that you load, but there's, in the Configuration.h, I've changed just about every parameter that's here to make it work, and I will talk more about what those ones are. For right now, let's just say that you have to do some changes with that software. Now, I have downloaded a few other pieces of software. The first one that you're going to need is called Pronterface. And this is kind of a low-level kind of hack type of thing, and since this is hooked up, there's a lot of things you can do. You can move X and Y and Z, and it's pretty easy to see. So I can move that. That just moved it. I'm not sure which way it moved. I can home it. If I go and click home, it's going to go up to the top of the limit switches, and that's going to bring us up to home. And that's what happens when you don't have your sensor. The sensor fell off. I've got to glue that better. We'll try that one more time. Turn it back on. By the way, that's really bad. If something like that happens, you want to try to avoid as much as possible. Keep your finger on the power switch. I'm going to do that again. Home. And you can see each one of the 3 just auto levels. Tells it where it's at. And right now it does not know where the plate is though. And so to do that, we have to do down here, if I do a G28 in this interface, basically this is just a command line, or not a command line, a serial port interface. So you could do this on PuTTY or HyperTerminal. But if I do a G28, that's an auto level. And there's a document online. These are very standardized. If I do a G29, this is where the fun happens. With G29, it's going to lower our printer down, and what's happening here is it's going to lower that head down until it touches the first place, and when it touches that, it's going to start to build a plane for a robot. It's going to do a whole bunch of them. Now here's the thing, I had to adjust a nut that's underneath that heat sink on the bottom. You see all those fins on the bottom of the head? I had to take that off and adjust a nut. The nut, it tightens against the pressure sensor, and it has to be just at the right tightness, and I think I'm going to get a second nut for that as well. So if it does that, it has done everything properly. This last little bit I discovered is if you have an actual limit switch, what that last little bit there is actually uses a screw to flick it up into the air so it doesn't touch anymore, and there's an offset. Once we're set there and we have the right parameters, it's actually ready to go. So the Pronterface is good for the command line level, and that's about it. And so the other thing is that you have to, if you come over here, you have to disconnect if you want to either program up the firmware. So if I come down to the Arduino and I want to reload the firmware, which is with that, I have to be disconnected. But my first attempt at making stuff, I used a program called Slice3R. Now Slice3R, I'll make a better video of all the software here, is just kind of nice because you can go and open up your STL files and add a file. And I don't care what it is, so okay. So you can add it, and you have to do a whole bunch of print settings. What's kind of nice is under the printer settings, they have actually you can go file and import. You can import a load of config file here, and the Blomker website has a one that fits. All I had to adjust was like 230mm bed size, and all of this filament settings you can adjust. Print settings you can adjust those things as well, and then you may export the G-code. Once the G-code is made, you can go back to, and I guess that there's an issue right now, I haven't been using this recently. Once the G-code is made, you can use the Pronterface to load that file, and it'll print from here. Now Pronterface has turned out to be great for low level, but for high level I've tried this Repatier thing, and it's kind of nice because it has the Slice3R already built in, and this is an example of that. I put that here, and I guess I can move it around. I don't know if it'll let me move around. The one thing I don't like is it always has to be centered on my build plate. I can't grab it and move it. It always has to be centered. And then what you do is you move over to the slicer, and it had to be set up with the same thing. And we slice it. It sits and makes a whole bunch of slices, and it's kind of cool. And maybe we have to come up here and connect via the USB port. By the way, it's 250,000 or 250K. And then we just start the print. At the start of the print, it's going to auto level, and it's going to do a tap control. And if you look at the interface, what's really cool is it shows our temperature here. And the temperature is going to start to climb, but it's going to climb at the same time that it does the auto level. So here it goes through the auto level again. It's so cool, I'm going to record it again. As it's doing this, I'm going to warn you about some things that are going to happen. If you find that it randomly seems like it's getting closer to the plate or scraping across the plate, you have a parameter in your config file wrong. Specifically, the lengths of your rods would then be wrong. I had a big problem with that initially. I had the head scraping across my plate all the time. It was destroying it. It was really annoying. So now it's going to wait for the temperature to go up. I'll bet you that temperature is going to pop right up. I had to futz around a little bit with the height. There's a height offset because people's temperature's almost up. I had to futz around with the height because other people who do a mechanical switch rather than the pressure switch that I've gotten there, they need an offset for that, and this offset turned out to be positive 1 millimeter or negative 1 millimeter. Maybe it was positive 1 millimeter. I'll have to look at the config file. Whatever the case, I've got it to where it prints pretty well, and it's going to start printing here as soon as it gets up to temperature, which is really quick. But if you find it scraping, the problem is that it's looking for a plane. And if your arm length is defined incorrectly, so the length of this, and there's a couple other, there's about 3 or 4 parameters, so it's going to start to print. and we can get a better angle. What happens is it's a non-linear, if your length is wrong, it gives you a non-linear issue. And the non-linear issue says something to the effect of where it'll be looking for, to your view, a curved surface. And so because it's looking for a curved surface and it's receiving a flat surface, it's going to keep on running into the plate, the build plate, as it does it. And that's kind of annoying because it's looking for something flat, and so it's just going to take the average of everything. What you're going to notice is if you run that code, the G29 in the Pronterface, what you end up seeing is the heights that it's seeing. And if you see some wild differences in heights, your heights should all be within 1 millimeter of each other in each line, and it'll spit them out on that little command line there. I've got a really slow setting for the speed on this. Anyways, if you notice that you have really wild numbers and you're scraping, it means your lengths that you have are all incorrect. And you have to be really close. I don't even think I don't think it's exact right now. I get a little bit of a dip, maybe a 0.5 millimeter dip in my in the center of my builds right now, but at least I'm not a full millimeter off from side to side where I'm scraping up my build plate. So that's what's been going on. The one thing that's been kind of annoying to me about this is I haven't been able to control very well the speed that it goes. And the Slice 3R software does let me control the speed a little bit, but some of it I haven't been able to find the setting for it. It's been kind of odd. The other thing that if you've used other 3D printers, what's missing here is there's no tip cooler, or really what it is the filament cooler after it's been laid. And I'm actually going to build one. I'm going to 3D print one and put it down there, because that makes it to where it sets immediately. So it just has air blowing right at the tip down on the material. And what it does for you is it makes the material set immediately as you lay it down. What that allows you to do is do floating stuff really a lot better if you've used another printer. So I'm going to build one of those and update this with another one. But you can see it's printing out. This one's really slow because I was trying to get the floating stuff to work, and I thought slow would work better, but it doesn't. What really works better is if you have the cooling right at the tip here. Some other things I've noticed, having the spool winder up here is a little bit annoying, but one tip that I have is if you ever have a problem, disconnect it here and then use the squeeze to unlock it. I haven't gotten the feed right on the filament either, and that's kind of a funny thing. And it's just something you have to futz with to get it to the way that you like it. I think I have it pretty close here. And my problem with that's probably my problem with the speed is at some of the speeds you can hear the motor up there clicking, which means that it can't feed the material. It's trying to feed the material too fast. So there's all those things. I'm going to build the cooler like I said. The other thing is there's a scale factor for how far these move up and down. And I found a pretty good way of measuring that. So if you set them, if you run a G28 and get it here, you can set it 10 millimeters below this, and you can measure the distance from here to the top of one of those using an inside caliper, and I did that. And then beyond that, I'd move another 10 millimeters, and that would give me my calibration for how far these moved per click, or how many millimeters per click, which is one of the parameters in the config.h. And so you can see that it's printing now. It's actually doing really well. I'm pretty happy with it. But I wish that there would have been a little bit more information on the website, on the MakerGeek website, or somebody else that had done this, and that's why I'm doing it, so that you can get an idea of what you can do. I'm trying to think of anything else. Don't use clear filament your first time around, because it's hard to see, and use something else. The other thing is obviously limit switches up here. I'm going to hot glue, because you saw what happens if you do not hot glue those limit switches in place. And I'm definitely going to do that very soon here with that. And really, the build actually wasn't all that bad. I still have yet to print from an SD card. I'm going to try that. here's what I think is really cool about the Repatier Host software, is that it actually shows the layers that they're laying as they do it. See that they're laying down that line exactly as that one's laying down that line. It's kind of exciting to see. It's kind of a fun thing to see, and it does it just slightly before it runs the code that does it. And so it's kind of a fun thing for you to look at, and I really actually like that a lot. So keep on playing around with it a little bit. But the parameters that you're all going to be changing are mainly in this document on the Configuration.h. And I'm not going to do it on my phone, I'm going to do it on my computer, do a completely separate video that shows all the parameters that I put in, and which ones you can mess around with to make it just a little bit better. All in all, I love the construction. I've had to lube up the rails just a little bit, make sure it doesn't go too fast, otherwise it starts slipping poles, or slipping the track a little bit. But it's very cool. The other thing that I notice is you don't quite get the full 230 millimeter diameter. You can, but it starts having some issues with that. So if you have some questions, post them in the comments. I will do my best to answer them, or if you have any suggestions, I'd love to hear those in the comments. But so far this has been kind of a fun project. It hasn't been all that painstaking. I still have to try this with ABS. I've just done PLA so far, so this one has the heated bed, the upgrade. Came with the heated bed and the SD and USB, and I have to print a case for that. Right now it's tied to a computer, which is kind of annoying, and I want to have it be independent of that. But really, I've been really impressed with the high quality of everything on there. I've been really surprised at how well the tap sensor works for auto leveling. That's been kind of a nice thing that that works so well for that. So send me some comments, some questions, some thoughts on what you think of this, or if you want to do it. I paid about $1,200 for the entire kit. It took about 3 weeks to get here, and it's been working, I think, rather well ever since I got all those configuration parameters. Hope you enjoy yours.